Honorable Rector of the University of Warsaw, Professor Nowak, distinguished students, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to greet all of you and to say it is indeed my pleasure to be here today with you and deliver a speech at this highly respected university. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start my speech by slightly touching upon the historical path that my country and its statehood have passed through. The Azerbaijani people who restored their independence in the late 20th century have ancient statehood history. The traditions of statehood date back to 5,000 years with the first state establishments or ethnic political units appearing in the Azerbaijani territory in the late 4th, early 3rd millennium BC. Azerbaijan has been home to a number of states such as Manna, Media, Atropatena, Caucasus Albania, Shirvanshah, Algoyunlu, Safavid Empire, and others. Despite experiencing also hard periods throughout the history, like occupation by Sasanian Iranian Empire in the 3rd century and by the Arab Caliphate in the 7th century, or division in two parts by Russian Empire and Iran in 19th century, the Azerbaijani people have not lost and preserved their legacy, traditions, and natural culture. Proclamations in 1918 of the first democratic parliamentary republic in the Muslim East, Azerbaijan Democratic Republic, was expression of all these. Azerbaijan Democratic Republic undertook important measures in building an independent democratic state. The first parliament and government, state institutions were created. The national flag, anthem, and emblem were adopted. The country's borders were defined. Territorial integrity and national security were ensured. All citizens were granted the same rights without racial, ethnic, religious discrimination. In 1918, in Azerbaijan, for the first time in the East, and long before some European countries, women were granted the right to vote. The Parliament of Azerbaijan Democratic Republic gets a special attention. Being the first legislative body formed on the basis of the most democratic principles of that time in the Muslim East, the parliament represented all ethnic groups in the country. It had 96 members, 11 various party fractions and groups. During 1.5 years, more than 270 bills and draft laws were submitted for the parliamentary discussion. Almost 230 adopted laws were important in terms of the strengthening of the national independence, political, economic, cultural, and educational development. Unfortunately, Azerbaijan Democratic Republic lasted only 23 months. On April 28, 1920, Azerbaijan was occupied by the Bolshevik Russia. Dear participants, and later, during the Soviet era, Azerbaijan's statehood faced serious challenges, but I believe the severest one was the annexation of Azerbaijan's territories, such as Zangezur, Göyçe, part of Nakhchivan, and other regions to Armenia, and the establishment of autonomous entity in Karabakh region of Azerbaijan. The destructive effects of those decisions of the Soviet regime would be perceived after 70 years. And with your permission, I will touch upon this issue later, ladies and gentlemen. Let me say now that during the Soviet era, the parliament had limited powers and was not in a position to reflect demands of the nation. However, even in such conditions, the people of Azerbaijan were able to preserve the traditions of parliamentarism. Also, Azerbaijan was not an independent state within the Soviet Union. That period played an important role in shaping the foundations for future state independence. And restoration of independence in 1991 marked the beginning of a new era in the history of the Azerbaijani statehood. Distinguished participants, you can ask me a question. How can we define today Azerbaijan's place and role within the international community? Let me answer this question. First, Azerbaijan is a responsible member that accepts the norms and principles of international law as the only code of conduct in international arena. Second, Azerbaijan is a country that pursues multi-vector cooperation and equal partnership based on mutual trust and interest. And third, Azerbaijan is a country that puts dialogue and solidarity at the center of all of these principles. Ladies and gentlemen, and now I would like to elaborate on these points. Last year, we celebrated the 30th anniversary of Azerbaijan's membership in the United Nations. During all of these years, Azerbaijan has been a responsible member of the United Nations, doing its best to defend principles of international law and justice. Azerbaijan was elected as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council for the term of 2012-2013 with support of 155 member states, which demonstrates the level of trust put in Azerbaijan by international community. Azerbaijan also chaired the Security Council twice and initiated discussions on important issues, such as strengthening international cooperation in the implementation of counter-terrorism obligations and strengthening the partnership synergy between the United Nations and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Along with the United Nations, Azerbaijan is also a member of other international and regional organizations such as the Non-Aligned Movement, Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the Council of Europe, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, Organization of Turkic States, Organization of Black Sea Economic Cooperation, and others. As an active member of international community, Azerbaijan holds as high priority establishment of international peace and security. My country has contributed to many international peacekeeping operations conducted under the mandate of United Nations Security Council and also participated in NATO-led resolute support mission in Afghanistan. In times of growing concerns over energy security, Azerbaijan has been a consistent and reliable oil and gas supplier to Europe and international markets, contributing to energy security of its partners. Implementation of mega projects such as the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan oil pipeline and the Southern Gas Corridor completely changed the energy map of Europe, playing a vital role in diversification of energy supplies. Also, ladies and gentlemen, large-scale transportation infrastructure projects implemented by Azerbaijan transformed our country into one of the main international transportation and logistics hubs in the Middle Corridor, significantly contributing to the development of the East-West transportation corridors. Distinguished participants, today Azerbaijan is regarded as one of the world centers of intercultural and interreligious dialogue. Located as a crossroads of East and West in the South Caucasus region, Azerbaijan has been home to various ethnic and religious groups that have coexisted together in dignity, peace, and friendship. Different religious and cultural monuments, mosques, churches, and synagogues are located side by side in my country. Multiculturalism is a way of life for our people. Consequently, respect for different cultures, religions, and races is an integral part of the moral values of the Azerbaijani people and state policy. Thus, promotion of multiculturalism and tolerance is not an artificial phenomenon for our country. Having hosted numerous international events such as United Nations Alliance of Civilizations Forum, Global Baku Forum, World Religious Leaders Forum, and Intercultural Dialogue Forum, Azerbaijan views intercultural and interreligious dialogue as a main factor that can lead to global peace, harmony, and cooperation. Dear participants, since 2019, Azerbaijan is a chair of the Non-Aligned Movement, the largest international institution after the United Nations. In the framework of the chairmanship, Azerbaijan took important steps in institutional development of the movement. Acknowledging the importance of interparliamentary cooperation on a global scale, Azerbaijan put forward the initiative to develop parliamentary dimension of the movement. Being inaugurated in Madrid in November 2021, the Parliamentary Network of the NAM held its first Baku conference in June 2022 in Azerbaijan and the second Manama conference in Bahrain this year. Another important undertaking was the establishment of the NAM Youth Organization with its permanent secretariat to be located in Baku. So these activities are seen as the elements of further strengthening solidarity and cooperation between 120 members of the NAM representing different regions of the globe. Dear participants, Azerbaijan's chairmanship in the NAM coincided with the worst period of the COVID-19 pandemic. Noteworthy, my country used this chairmanship as a tool to solidify collective efforts and joint actions of international community in the fight against pandemic. Azerbaijan put forward a number of successful global initiatives for this purpose. On the initiative of the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan, Mr. Ilham Aliyev, as the chairman of the Non-Aligned Movement, the special session of the United Nations General Assembly dedicated to combating the COVID-19 pandemic was held in December 2020. And in March and December 2021, the United Nations Human Rights Council and the General Assembly adopted resolutions titled Ensuring Equitable, Affordable, Timely and Universal Access for all countries to vaccines in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Azerbaijan provided coronavirus-related financial and humanitarian support to more than 80 countries. President Aliyev also suggested the establishment of the United Nations High-Level Panel on Global Recovery from COVID-19, which can develop concrete recommendations on global measures in the post-pandemic period. At the summit-level meeting of the NAM Contact Group in response to COVID-19 held in Azerbaijan in March this year, President Aliyev declared two global calls to support the post-pandemic recovery of Africa and small island developing states, and announced allocation of $1 million for both global calls by Azerbaijan. All these initiatives were intended to strengthen international solidarity and cooperation in the fight against the pandemic and also in the post-pandemic recovery. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, Azerbaijan is a strong supporter of a rules-based international order, behaviors that promote dialogue, solidarity and cooperation between states and communities. We strongly believe norms and principles of international law, such as respect to territorial integrity, sovereignty, non-interference in internal affairs, should be cornerstones of international system. Unfortunately, at the end of the 20th century, Azerbaijan has faced devastating effects of disrespect to the above-mentioned principles. It was the act of aggression by our neighbor, Armenia, towards Azerbaijan. Armenia occupied 20% of internationally recognized territories of Azerbaijan and kept them under occupation for about 30 years. During these years, Armenia destroyed all our cities and villages, vandalized all historical, cultural, and religious sites at these territories, committed an ecological terror against the nature. Ethnic cleansing by Armenia in these territories resulted in more than 1 million Azerbaijanis becoming internally displaced persons from the occupied territories and refugees from Armenia. And in 1920, after the 27 years of expectations of the peaceful solutions of this conflict, Azerbaijan, using the right of self-defense, which is provided by the Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, our country single-handedly implemented United Nations Security Council resolutions, norms and principles of international law, and restored its territorial integrity and historical justice. Now we have started the large-scale restoration and reconstruction works in these territories on the basis of the concept of smart cities and smart villages. The first families of former IDPs have already started returning back to their homes. And one of the most important problems, ladies and gentlemen, in these works is more than 1 million mines planted by Armenia in these territories. In the last 2 years, almost 300 civilians and military personnel have been killed and injured in mine explosions. Despite being the victim of occupation, Azerbaijan makes efforts to ensure a long-term peace and stability in the region and has proposed to Armenia to sign a peace agreement on the basis of 5 principles of international law. However, Armenia still grossly violates its undertaken obligations by keeping its armed formation in the internationally recognized territories of Azerbaijan and hindering the opening of all communications and transport routes in the region. Armenia has unilaterally withdrawn from peace negotiations and has been using military provocation in the border and in Azerbaijan's sovereign territories in order to aggravate the situation. They are participants, but Azerbaijan looks into the future and strives for peace, because peace is the only way to achieve stability, development, and cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, now let me turn to relations between our countries. Azerbaijan and Poland are friendly and partner countries. Last year, we celebrated the 30th anniversary of establishment of diplomatic relations. Also, the history of our modern relations covers 31 years. Traditions of friendship and cooperation between our people have existed for centuries. Back in the 15th century, Uzun Hasan, the ruler of the state of Akkoyunlu of Azerbaijan, had close contacts with the Polish king Jagiello. The correspondence between them started in 1472 and lasted until the 1475. Our relations have been maintained in the following periods as well. The memory of Polish architects, engineers, and public figures who worked in Azerbaijan at different times is fondly remembered in Azerbaijan. The Poles took an active part in the activities of the Azerbaijan Democratic Republic. General Maciej Sulkevich was the chief of staff of the Azerbaijani army at that time. The Krichinsky brothers held leading positions in the government. Stanislav Vansovich was elected a member of the parliament of the Azerbaijan Democratic Republic on behalf of the Baku Poles. He was a member of the national minority fraction in the parliament. At the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, the Poles played a special role in the formation of the architectural image of the city of Baku. The buildings built with the project of Joseph Goslavsky, who was the chief architect of Baku, as well as the architects Joseph Ploshka, Kazimierz Gurevich, Eugeny Skibinsky, and others, are still outstanding examples of architecture in our capital today. By the way, in the framework of the official visit of President of the Republic of Poland, Mr. Andrzej Duda, to Azerbaijan in May-June 2019, one of the streets in Baku was named after the Polish architects, and memorial plaques were established there. The Poles have also contributed to Azerbaijan's oil industry. Famous engineer Pavel Potocki took an active part in the development of Azerbaijan's oil industry, and he is still remembered in our country. According to his will, Potocki was buried in Baku, and a monument was erected there in his memory. In February 1920, Poland de facto recognized the independence of Azerbaijan. In April 1920, the Parliament of the Azerbaijan Democratic Republic adopted a law on the establishment of a diplomatic mission in Poland, but unfortunately, this law was not implemented, ladies and gentlemen, because the Democratic Republic ceased to exist after the establishment of Soviet power in Azerbaijan. So, my dear friends, as you can see, there is a rich history of relations between our countries and peoples, and it has been a solid foundation for the development of modern relations. Currently, political relations between Azerbaijan and Poland are at a high level. Numerous mutual visits of presidents and other state officials are a proof to it. Joint declaration on the roadmap for strategic partnership and economic cooperation between the Republic of Azerbaijan and the Republic of Poland, signed within the framework of the official visit of the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan, Mr. Ilham Aliyev, to Poland in 2017, covers many areas of bilateral relations and has raised the relations between the two countries to the level of strategic partnership. Let me say that there is a huge potential in different fields of cooperation, and there is a firm will from both sides to use this potential and develop cooperation in economy, trade, transport, and other areas. Active collaboration exists within the framework of international organizations. Azerbaijan supported election of Poland as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council for the years of 2018-2019. I believe further development of this cooperation meets the interests of both countries. Dear participants, long traditions of the relations between our countries have a very positive impact on cooperation in education, science, culture, and tourism. Numerous cultural events, active interaction between universities, implementation of important projects such as Polish Language and Cultural Center at the Baku Slavic University and Azerbaijan Studies Center under the Faculty of Oriental Studies at the University of Warsaw brings our people even closer. Of course, one of the factors that has an important and positive influence on bilateral and multilateral relations between countries is the interaction of parliaments. We parliamentarians represent our people, and our work reflects their will. In the case of relations between the parliaments of Azerbaijan and Poland, I should say that today a very fruitful cooperation has been established between our legislative bodies, both on bilateral and within the framework of inter-parliamentary organizations. Mutual visits of speakers of parliaments, friendship groups, have given an important impetus to the further development of this cooperation. And my dear friends, during the past 3 days, I had several meetings with my colleagues, and I am very satisfied with the results of my visit to your beautiful country. Discussions were held and agreements were reached, proof that friendly relations and mutually beneficial cooperation between our parliaments and countries will continue successfully develop and strengthen. Ladies and gentlemen, dear participants, concluding my speech, I would like to once again express my delight of being today with you and wish you success in all your future activities. Thank you very much.